Welcome to the Online Success Journey Podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey Podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 63. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Allan Knight, a coach for 25 years, an author and a former Zen Monk turned communication and personal development expert. Hello Allan.
Hi Patience, how are you this morning? Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming. I know the clan here is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basics. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, about what you did before you started your online business? Take us right up to the last job or business before you were online.
Okay, very quickly, when I was 13 years old, my mother was diagnosed with cancer and told she had about 6 months to live. And she lived for about 20 years. So my mother was my first role model of the power of the human spirit. And then when I was 19 or 21, my father passed away. I took a year off university. I was studying the bachelor in psychology at the time. And I took a year off and traveled around the world. And during that experience, I came very close to dying on the desert, which was a very life-changing experience for me. And at that point, I went from being sort of an atheist and into, I was a jock, like quite an athlete at the time. And then I became sort of more open to spiritual things, and I ended up living in a Zen monastery for 9 years of my life. So that was a very life-changing experience. And that helped me to go much more deep into my own self, because I was always interested in relationships and communication, but I knew I was losing my own sense of myself. So there was a lot of self-exploratory work that I needed to do. But after 9 years of being a monk, I missed girls too much, Patience. So I left the monastery, got a few jobs in call centers, and then went back to get a master's degree in education in counseling psychology from McGill University. Now, my thesis that I wrote was about the fact that the quality of relationships we have with other people, either offline or online, start with the relationship we have with ourselves. And that's been my keynote philosophy right up until now. And I knew when I looked around me and I looked at business and personal relationships, it always came back to the fact that there were a lot of dysfunctional relationships, dysfunctional communication, and it always went back to how we look at ourselves. And I began to notice that the biggest problem that I saw around me was that most people are very self-critical and very hard on themselves. So once I got my master's degree, I started working on a training program because I noticed that a lot of motivational seminars were very good, but a lot of focus was on either reading books or rah-rah seminars that get you pumped up for a little while, and then you sort of go back to being at the same state. So I dedicated myself to creating a training system, and over the years I developed a 9-step formula that's equivalent to going into a gymnasium to work out physically. And if you go through it, it fast tracks your ability to master your communication skills by mastering yourself. In a nutshell, that's a quick overview of my background. I hope that was clear.
Wow, that's a great background, Allan. Why do you do what you do, really?
I would say it's an excellent question, because I know that, a lot of people are motivated by money first, and, and anything they do is okay. But from a very young age, I was always aware of a compassionate motive, that life didn't seem meaningful to me unless I was going to make a difference in the world. And to see people grow, to see people get into great relationships gives me a lot of pleasure. And I would say compassion is my number one motivator. Like, life doesn't seem meaningful enough unless you want to help people. So I've never been driven first by my own desires, although I'm human and I like things. I would say compassion is my main motivation.
I know, Allan, you've been in the business for the last 25 years plus. So let's put man aside. How do you know you are successful in your program?
Well, the reason I know that this is unique and successful is that because the very nature I focus, when it comes to training and education, a lot of people see it as theoretical. I read an article, and when I moved to Vancouver from Montreal, I read an article many years ago that said why most training programs fail. And in that article, it cited that billions of dollars are spent every year on self-development and sales development, and why most of them fail. And the two most critical reasons were that most of it is a lot of theory and information, a lot of hype, or a lot of rah-rah motivation and hype, like you go to a 2-3 day conference and get pumped up. So the reason I dedicated myself to creating a practical system is that I think in order to transform ourselves and our communication, we need to take our learning out of the intellectual, out of the knowledge, and into practical application, transformation, and ultimately mastering our communication. So the reason that the program that I have really works is that people not only grow fairly quickly, but they also have a self-coaching system for life. So whenever they get off track, they know exactly what to do to get back on track. So I know because I can see the evidence in people's rating scores, some of the exercises we give them, but mostly by their life, by their happiness, their contentment, their self-mastery, and their relationships that they've developed as a result of our training. So I'm very confident that what we have is very practical and results-oriented.
Does setup help really work?
It really works, and mainly I have to prove it in my own life, because for me the key is to become happy with yourself, content. The most successful people in my eyes are people that have a certain level of inner peace, tranquility, happiness in themselves, and then the outside success is just a bonus. It's an extra thing. But a lot of people strive for success externally, but then often have very dysfunctional lives as a result of the lack of work they do on themselves. So this is a very powerful and unique training that I've developed that helps people to achieve that.
Can anyone be good at these training courses or become an author? Or maybe some of you have really a big gift from God. Can anyone really master the formula?
Well, first of all, it is true that we all have various gifts and talents. That's true. But if someone, I think the key thing is not so much that people do what I do. I think what's much more important is people get in touch with what they are all about. You know, someone might desire to be a plumber. Plumbing is I can't believe the things that a plumber does. To me, they're much more intelligent than I am in that regard. So I think people need to really be true to their passion. But for people who desire to do the kind of work that I do, absolutely they're able to, because everybody has the ability to work on their own attitude. Everybody has the ability to work on their own self-confidence. Everybody has the ability to communicate with impact. And whatever, you might be a quieter person or a louder person. My voice is quite loud, but you don't have to have a loud voice like mine to be successful. I'm successful in what I do because it was always a passion of mine. So to answer your question, yes, people can certainly pursue very successfully the kind of work I do, but more importantly, they should be pursuing what they're driven to do.
How can someone be at ease and confident with anyone at any time?
Oh, I can see you read some of the material. Well, again, it goes back to so many people are afraid of rejection. They're afraid, they're full of fear, anxiety, and often people lack the social skills. And a lot of that has to do with the fears, insecurities, anxieties we have, often connected to our past. When we were brought up, we had certain conditioning and we developed those fears very early on in life. So what happens as we grow, there are certain things that trigger us. So for example, let's say we're a man and a woman, and some man sees a woman that he's very attracted to, but he's so attracted to her, but he doesn't feel good enough in himself. He becomes intimidated by that. He's afraid. He's afraid how she's going to see him. She's afraid that he might get rejected. So his whole presence is surrounded by the emotional stuff that's holding him back from being himself. So part of the training that we do is for people to identify those things that are holding people back and to neutralize them, and then to replace some of these emotional psychological turbulences, I call them, with inner fitness exercises. So as you grow and go through the 9 steps, you become more and more self-assured. You become more and more confident in who you are. And then you're more and more able to talk to anybody confidently at any time. Like I'm as confident talking to you as I am talking to the plumber that might come to fix my washroom or something like that, or going to see President Obama. It wouldn't matter to me who I'm speaking to. I feel confident because I'm confident in me, and I wasn't always. I was very insecure for many years. So as you develop these skills, you can literally connect with anybody at any time, anywhere, guaranteed.
Wow. Allan, have you been in business for many years? At any time, have you ever had a mentor?
Oh, of course. I think mentorship is I still do. I have a person in my life who's one of my best friends who's been a mentor for me for over 30 years. I've gone to a lot of training programs. I've had coaching at different times in my life, depending on what I needed, because we all need mentors. We all need coaches. I think the day that we don't learn and we don't have coaches, there's a danger, because a person, I think sometimes cults develop like that, where you have people following a leader, and often the leader gets very enamored by their own power, and is not very open to receiving feedback. So I hope that my goal is to always have mentors in my life until I die. Absolutely, I've had mentors.
Okay. What is the most valuable thing your mentor has told you?
I think the thing the piece of advice that's been the most important to me is when one of my mentors always would remind me when I got off track, when I got into too much worry and self-doubt. He said, get back to spirit, get back to your core, get back to your center. I call it getting in the Zen zone. And a lot of times we live in a world now where people have such hyperactive minds and such scattered minds that it's very easy to get confused. And I make a big distinction between the rational mind, the emotional mind, and the heart mind, the spirit mind. And many of us some people don't even know what that heart mind is, because if you tap into it, your intuition is going to guide you very beautifully. But way too often we get into our fears, or we get into our negative thinking and self-doubt. And I use the expression patience. I'm sure you heard this expression, knowledge is power. Yes. And often you go to meetings and they say, well, knowledge is power, and everyone puts up their hand and agrees with that. And my philosophy on that is knowledge is power in some areas. If you and I want to be a doctor, we better learn a lot of knowledge. That's going to help us along the way. But if we want to perfect our communication, our relationship skills, our personal development skills, often I find the opposite is power. The heart is power. Simplicity is power. Patience is power. Compassion is power. Listening skills are power. Now, a certain amount of knowledge helps, of course, but it's not the main thing. And that mentor taught me to always go back to my core, to the heart center, and coming from my heart, coming from my soul, coming from the spirit first, that would always guide me well. And that was probably the best piece of advice I ever got.
Wow. Okay. Tell us more about your fascination background, including being a Zen monk.
Well, there were not very romantic stories, I can tell you that. Go ahead.
So what did you do in those 9 years on being a monk?
Patience, you're laughing at me. I don't like the fact that you're laughing at me. I'm just teasing you.
Because well, you are making me just happy. I'm just being happy and comfortable with you.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, the first thing I want to say is just because I lived like a monk certainly doesn't mean that people should go out there and be a monk or nun for a long time. I learned certain things, but part of what I learned was that you can integrate a lot of that living the day-to-day lifestyle that we live. But getting back to your question, it was a very ascetic lifestyle. There was not a lot of chit-chatting or talking, sort of normal talking. We would meditate intensively 4 times a day. We did a lot of physical work, which was very grounding. We did a lot of reading. We had times where we shared in debates and shared our wisdom with each other. But it was very ascetic. Now, some people say, didn't you miss having fun and going out with girls? And I guess there was a certain amount of that. But when you live that kind of lifestyle away from society, you tend not to, you're not walking downtown getting stimulated every second by what you see. So it was easier to do it. But of course, after 9 years, I learned a big lesson. That I learned my lesson. I learned how important it was to meditate and do my chanting and getting in the zone and tapping into a whole other part of myself. But I needed to learn how to do that in day-to-day life. And that's why when I returned into society, there were a lot of challenges that I had to face in career, in relationships, and other things. So my training program is a culmination of learning on all levels, not just one level.
Okay, let's talk about your connect with the power training. Tell us more about that.
Well, in a nutshell, the Connect with Power training is the 9-step program, whether it's my book, A Knight Without Armor, where the book goes over 9 steps, the 9-step formula for relationship, success, and work and life. So wherever you go, whether it's to my book or my personal coaching or my soon-to-be digital products, most of it focuses on this simple, powerful 9 steps. And what would you like me to do? Would you like me to give you a quick overview of the 9 steps?
Please.
Okay, so step number 1 starts with taking stock of your life. We do a little assessment, and I call it an X-ray, where you get to see what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, because the first step is for you to stop, look, and listen. Have the courage to look inside yourself. Now, every month I have all my clients redo their exercise and they see their scores increase. So step number 2 is what we call dropping the armor, or letting go the negative past. And that's number 2 because most of us are not soaring ahead because of a lot of the psychological, emotional stuff and baggage that came from our past. So we have what's called 2A and 2B. 2A has to do with letting go and forgiving anyone from some of the trauma, negativity, some of the anger and resentment that you might have toward other people. So we have what's called a zap the past exercise. Then 2B is, even if you have forgiven everyone else, most of us are way too hard on ourselves and too self-critical. So we have some exercises there, zap the past exercise, to help neutralize that kind of feeling that you have toward yourself. Then as we move up the ladder, you're replacing the negativity with the positivity, and it starts with number 3, which design your purpose and vision. So I help people through creating an impact vision board. It's an inner visioning exercise to get crystal clear on what your short-term, medium-term, long-term vision is for your desired lifestyle. And that sets the foundation for the superstructure of building your very strong self. So 1, 2, and 3 are pretty easy. 4, 5, and 6 are more difficult. It takes a little longer to do. 4 is what we call unleashing your inner warrior, which is your inner fitness exercises. And in order to achieve your vision of number 3, you need to have mental toughness. You need to have a strong inner self. So I teach a variety of inner fitness exercise related to the rational mind, the emotions, and the big clear spirit mind. And so as you build those inner muscles, you start to feel better and better and better about yourself from the inside, which is the core. Number 5 is you start feeling better about yourself on the outside. It's about, we call it take charge of your life, action and accountability, because you have to go beyond working on your inner self. You need to achieve things in life, whether it's physical fitness or career success or fulfilling relationships. So we have a personal accountability system, tracking sheet, success partner, different things in number 5 to help you stay on track with the actions that you take. So number 4 and 5 patients help to build your personal power, overall feeling of who you are. Number 6 we call busting through the barriers, because as we grow, you and I know that we're going to have obstacles and challenges that come into our life. I call them dealing with the Scud missiles of life. And some of them are small, some of them are medium, some of them are large. And we have particular exercises that help you to neutralize so that when you get off track, you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get back on track faster and faster and faster. As you master number 6, you get into what we call a self-mastery zone, where that's a very significant stage of development because very little gets you off track for very long, and you're rooted in your center. It's such a wonderful, magical place to be. Number 7 we call the true power to manifest. We hear a lot of expression, law of attraction, law of manifestation. And the problem is that a lot of people who are not ready to do that, that requires a more advanced motivational techniques, which we teach in number 7. But if you haven't created the proper foundation, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, it makes the law of attraction not really attainable. And a lot of people are going to get very disappointed if they just hear, think positively. Think positively alone is not enough. So step number 1 to 7 patients is all about empowering yourself from the inside out.
Wow. Okay. And what about the 8 and 9?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask about that.
I'm following.
Well, now that you've done all this work on yourself, then our focus becomes mastering our communication skills with other people. So 8 is called communication mastery. And in that stage, we focus on teaching people business level how to master the art of phoning, networking, public speaking, relationship building, relationship selling, how to do a 30-second elevator speech, because there's a lot of people in home-based business, there are a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, and they need to master some of these techniques. And what I teach people is that about 80% of all our communication with other people starts from the inside out. That's why step number 1 to 7 is so important, because when you're oozing passion, enthusiasm, confidence, boldness, courage, assertiveness, all that's going to just flow through all your communication. But about 15 or 20% of your communication is content and technique. So we teach certain techniques in step number 8 to teach you how to be more effective as a communicator, but not just on a business level. We also just recently launched something called the Soulmate Revolution, because one of my passions has always been to create a social soulmate network to help bring, and our goal is by the year 2020 to bring 100,000 soulmates together. That's one of our goals. So I also teach people in the personal relationships as well.
Oh, okay. And where do we find all this information, Allan?
Well, there's a few places you can go to. You can go to my website, connectwithpower.com. You can also go to allanknight.com, ALLANKNIGHT.com. And you can also go to soulmaterevolution.com. So you can go to any one of those three sites.
Okay. So, clan, there will be more from Allan in a moment. If you are finding Allan's journey interesting and you are ready to hear more, come to listen to the full version of the interview at onlinesuccessjourney.com. If you are at the Online Success Journey already, by clicking on Part 2's Allan's journey, you will get more information about connecting with power and learning more about yourself. And don't forget, you can access all other Online Success Journey interviews, podcasts on the site as well. So check out Allan's website, Connect with the Power Training at
connectwithpower.com.
Yes. That's a wrap, clan. Remember, success is a journey. Patience and Allan, join us in Part 2 at onlinesuccessjourney.com.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every Journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com, filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps each of us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the Online Success Journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.